Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening. Welcome along. It's another Inspire and Be Inspired, weekly motivational conversation, occasional life hacks. My name is Andy Ward. I am live from the Costa Blanca. It is 1 minute after 7 o'clock on Tuesday, the 5th of July. It's a pleasure to have your company. I welcome along everybody watching us live and everybody coming back to check out the recording. We're broadcasting on Facebook and archiving on YouTube as well. Tonight's guest is somebody who I've known for a very long time. I am fresh from interviewing a superstar by the name of Man Parrish on my radio show on Sunday. I thought that was a challenging interview. I have a feeling that this interview is going to be equally as challenging, but for very, very good reasons. Mr. Brock Elbank is a very good friend of mine who, as I say, I've known for a few decades now. Our paths crossed on the clubbing circuit, and we're going to find out some of the incredible work that he's been doing. I invite you to leave any comments, any questions, and feel free to let me know you're watching so I can say hi to you. Without further ado, let me bring the gentleman onto the screen and say good evening, Brock. How are you?
Mr. Ward, always a pleasure. Lovely to see you, and you look nervous as hell.
Extremely nervous. We could actually be twins, almost.
Yeah. I mean, you're obviously the younger one, even though you're older. I think are you older than me? You are, aren't you?
Slightly older.
Because I'm 38 next week, and you're 41.
That's right. Yeah. So you're slightly older than me. Slightly older. I'm slightly older than you. I'm confused already. I'm confused because as I started talking, the computer started jittering. So I wondered if I was going to get plagued with issues, but it's fine. So look, let's get straight into this. My really brief introduction to yourself, a gentleman who I would have met sometime in 1993 or 1994.
Oh, before then.
Was it really?
Mm.
Okay, so we would have met Marco's. Did we meet at Marco Polo's, do you think?
I think probably in the toilets at Marco Polo's, wasn't it? Waiting for a urinal.
Quite possibly.
And it's been downhill ever since.
Yes, indeed. When we met, well, actually, let's not worry about when we met. This is about you yourself.
It's got to be getting on for 30 years, Andy. But you are the Peter Pan of progressive house. You're like the Benjamin Button of music. You just get younger as you get older.
I don't know how to take that. First of all, that means I'm getting... Actually, no, that means I'm getting better. But progressive house? House.
The only thing that became... I could think of with the P. I mean, I couldn't say punk. Progressive house, at least...
Oh, dear.
Already I'm going down the wrong avenue. But you are getting younger.
Thank you. I'll take the compliment. So let me start again, right? Because I did have a full script ready, and it's gone clean out the window. You are a gentleman who was very prolific on the clubbing circuit, and we will find out why with taking photographs. And
you're just starstruck after last week's interview.
Completely. I'm trying to keep this. We did say it's just going to be us two lads having a chat. It doesn't matter if anyone's watching or not. And we're going to scare everybody away with our non-stop jokes and banter. So anyway, Brock was working for Mixmag for a long time. He's gone on to achieve some great things, and during the course of this interview we are going to find out exactly what those things are, why he is a truly inspiring individual, and how some of the people he's met on his journey have also inspired him, and that is the takeaway from all of this. Would you think that's a fair synopsis of what's going to be happening today?
I think so, yeah. I mean, you did say to me it was Desert Island Discs. I mean, I've got 50-odd 7-inch singles here that I was going to go through. But if you want to do that, we can do that. That's fine.
Okay, Kay, thank you for your comments. She says, yeah, it happens with age. Forgetting what's going down. Indeed. It's all gone out the window. I don't understand why the computer seems to be freezing and jittering. And
It's probably the podcast gods doing what should be done. They know that collectively, you and I working together would be like Glenn Hoddle and Chris Waddle doing Diamond Lights. I mean, it's an accident waiting to happen. But we did meet in Birmingham, and I would say 92, 93. Latest, absolute latest. You literally, I think, have been living overseas in a pickling jar since then, because you just don't ever age. I mean, my beloved mother, who you met on numerous occasions, always said, what a lovely face Andy Ward's got. He's got such a lovely face. I mean, she was a dreadful judgy character, but she did say that you have got a very kind face, Mr. Ward, that just never ages.
And a kind heart. Well, can we not talk about my age again, please? It's making me very uncomfortable.
You're 20, what are you, 38?
Yeah, indeed. Right, let's get to the crux of it. Where are you from? Where are you from?
I originally am from a small village outside of Stratford-upon-Avon, so near Stratford, so in Warwickshire. I was born in 1973, so I'll be 50 next year, which I really can't believe. And I went to university to do photography, got a job working for Cult Clothing, which is now Superdry. And I was working just off New Street. So there was Autograph, there was, all those shops around there. All of the guys were doing nights in Birmingham. And the Ryan boys, who had a shop, asked me, they were doing a night at Venus up in Nottingham, where my two best mates were Steve and Simon were studying, and I knew Venus. It was a great club, and they said, you're a photographer, Brock. And I said, well, I'm studying photography. Oh, can you come down and shoot a couple of rolls of film off? And it was something very, very different to what I do, or did, or still do now. So I just, got a bunch of black and white rolls of film, Met's Flash, went up on the coach to Venus, shot a couple of rolls of film, and a couple of weeks later, Mixmag got in touch. I mean, this is obviously pre-mobile phones and emails. And I started doing sort of nights for them. Back in, it would have been 92, because I did uni 91 to 94, so it was 92, 93, and that's around the time we would have crossed paths.
We crossed paths at Marco's. We started talking. I mean, I don't remember the finer points. I just know that we became very good friends very quickly, right?
We did it. Well, we still. I mean, the fact we're chatting, 5 years later after we met when we were 20, 21. I think it speaks volumes on a serious note. It's 3 decades. So the fact we're still able to break each other's, lower regions. I won't swear on it, mate. I don't. You can actually swear on my.
You can actually swear on my.
Don't give me that kind of information so early in the chat. But yeah, I think 3 years, 3 decades, mate. And we're still, it's always the same. I think that's a sign of a good friendship, my friend.
It is indeed. It is indeed. So that friendship, actually, you managed to pull some strings for me. And back in 94 or 95, you got me hooked up in Mixmag, as you may not. I'm sure you do remember.
I do. You remember the interview? Yeah.
Yeah. One of the 10 top DJs to look out for in the UK. One of the.
I'm still paying that debt off to the magazine. The EMC. I'm still paying off a monthly subscription charge for that.
Well, I'm very honoured. It's a nice little feather in the cap to have had. Mixmag was a huge institution. Obviously, we're telling people everything they already know. What did it mean for you to work for Mixmag back then, and what did it entail?
Good question, Wardy, actually. So when Mixmag called me up, they literally said, "Do you want to start doing shooting for us?" And I think they paid me £40 a published image per issue, plus obviously guest list for, I think it was 4 to 6 people, and petrol money, which, I mean, obviously now with the Ukraine crisis, I'd be earning about £900 a mile.
Let me just confirm, £40 an image or £40 per article?
No, an image that was published. That was a month. So if I did 8 images, that was what's that? £320. God no, get the abacus out. That's half a crown.
I'm thinking there were some people had a lot of images on like the club pages. So there was the opportunity to earn some big dollar there, right?
Not really, because I spent it all on hair products.
Clearly. Okay, so carry on then. So, and would you say you were held in high esteem within the ranks of Mixmag? You weren't. How many photographers would they have had on the book?
Jonathan Fleming and Donovan were. I mean, Jonathan was lovely. And he really sort of took me under his wing, because I was like 18, 19 when I started shooting for them. And it wasn't something that I envisaged that I would be doing sort of 10 years down the line, i.e. doing gigs and stuff. And a lot of photographers sort of specialise in doing events and what have you. But what it did, it kind of gave me an opportunity to go to all these amazing clubs, which still at the time, it was a very underground scene, as you'll concur with that, Andy. It wasn't sort of mainstream. I mean, when we're going to places like Wobble and all that early on, before Money Pennies and all that sort of thing, the DJs were playing tracks that just weren't in the charts for like 8 or 9 months. Mm-hmm. Do you remember? I mean, they'd play stuff, and definitely. It just wasn't. I mean, and you'd sort of see
charts weren't even really part of the equation back then.
It was almost like being in the Masons. It was like being in this thing, and you would. What I used to love about it in the early days were that you'd sort of walk around Brum or Nottingham or Mansfield. You used to go to Renaissance there with Sasha and Digweed and what have you, and you'd sort of recognise people on the street on a Saturday afternoon, and you'd kind of sort of nod to each other. But you didn't know them, but you sort of recognised them from seeing them at a club night a few weeks ago. But because it was such a small thing, it was like this, it was just very underground, wasn't it? Yeah, I mean, really early 90s we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So,
tribal, in fact.
Say again.
Sorry.
Say again.
I'm not sure if it's you or me, but there's a bit of a delay. I was saying it was very tribal in that aspect.
Very much indeed. It just felt like we were part of this secret club, without the use of the word club. I mean, that was an awful pun. But it did seem that way. Everything was very underground. Like when Cream would be after Wobble, you'd have to sort of drive to this phone box in Digbeth and meet someone, and they'd give you a phone number, and you'd go drive halfway across Birmingham to this, and it was a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
Back then, wasn't it?
So you were able to get some good shots amidst the fun, right? Would you say you were quite professional, or did it get a bit messy for you at times?
As a 19-year-old.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was, looking back now, I think at the time you don't, when you're sort of in your late teens, early 20s, and you're going out with your friends and you're meeting people and you're just having a lot of fun. in a nutshell. You know, you're out for the weekend and you go in here and there and everything's kind of last minute. And I think early on I was learning the trade because shooting sort of club nights was very different to shooting fashion or portraiture. So you kind of had to keep your wits about you, and also you turn up at a venue, and if you'd never been there before, you have to kind of go around and see what it's like, because if it's low light and you can't see what the hell you're doing, it's a bit challenging from a technical point of view.
I mean, so 30 years down the line, people will pick up a camera now, say, "Oh, I'm a photographer. I'm going to get some shots." Back then, it was a completely different.
Well, like a blanket over
right?
blanket over the head, watch the birdie, big puff of smoke, sheet film. I mean, it was a laborious process, Andy. I mean,
did you take pride in your skill in being able to capture shots and aspects of a shot that maybe others didn't get?
Yeah, of course. And I think also the longer you work for, the longer I work for Mixmag, I kind of quite early on, I think you sort of learn to gauge what they were after. So if there was some, big head honcho DJ in town playing at a certain venue and you were being sent there, they'd obviously want the obligatory shots of whoever on the decks. And obviously the chuff parties, going back to that, those sorts of events were all very decadent, and there was a lot of, I would say beautiful people, I suppose it would be. So, you sort of, when you do something that was 12 hours, you'd have a few hours just to kind of check the ground, see where you're going. And then once it kicked in, then you'd sort of shoot for 3 or 4 hours and then just enjoy the rest of the afternoon with yourself.
Enjoy the decadence. So we had 1 or 2 road trips on many occasions.
We did, mate. We had many road trips.
Some good times indeed. So tell us the progression that would have happened whilst, and how long did the photography, I can't even get that word out, how long did the photography for Mixmag continue?
So I think it was 91 or 92 to 95. So it was about 4 years in total. And I think, there was a massive shift within that time as well. I mean, when I first started, it was still very much underground, and the sort of music acts weren't on top of the pops and all of that stuff. And then the latter part, it sort of broke into the mainstream, and clubs were popping up left, right and centre.
Well, if I could just pause you there, forgive me. I do try to make this as interactive as possible for anyone who cares to comment that's watching. Andrew Milford has left a comment. Thank you, my friend. I will be seeing you Saturday. I'll give that a plug at the end of the show. He says, in the late 80s to early 90s, art, music, fashion and attitude, you had an instant connection with total strangers who became friends for life. We were on the margins of popular culture, which backs up what you said. It was a beautiful thing that really cannot exist in today's digital world. How about that?
I think that's a very poignant comment. I think
move over to your left for me. Move over to your left for me. I can't. There you go. Stay there. Thank you.
Sorry.
Continue.
I had a paper round this morning, mate. I'm a bit tired.
Yeah. So you say 95, the landscape changed.
Well, 95, I moved to London to pursue getting into what I wanted to do, which was fashion photography. So I moved to London in March 95. Blagged a sofa on a mate's ex-girlfriend's couch in Clapham Common, who I'd never met before. And I was meant to move into Highbury and Islington with a couple of mates. And the day before I moved down to London, I got a job and everything. And my mate rang me up from Islington and said, Brock, the landlord's selling the house. And I'm like, what do you mean? He said, he's selling it. The room's not available now. And they had literally a couple of weeks to move out. So I was in Leamington, of all places, and went into a mate's shop, and he said, I told him what was going on, and he said, I'll ring my old girlfriend in Clapham. I said, what do you mean? He said, yeah, sorry, I've got hay fever. He said, I'll ring her up. You'll be able to crash on the sofa. And I was
that tree behind you might not be helping.
I might have to go and get some antihistamine tablets. Anyway, so long story short, he rings up this girl who worked in Harrods, and I drove down to London, got her keys from her outside Harrods, never met this girl before, and crashed on her sofa for a few weeks until I could find accommodation. But that was it. My eyes are really stinging. I'm really sorry about this. Do
you want to stop and go and get
No, it's all right. I'm a professional, mate. I'm a professional. I've got a towel here just in case. Just going to go. So, yeah, so I moved. I'm really sorry. Oh, they're stinging. It's live. I mean, this is what happens. But I'm a true professional, mate. I'll keep going.
Let me just turn my air conditioning down.
So I moved to London and started working at a place called Metro Studios, which was like I'd suppose it would be like the rock star studio where all the big fashion photographers worked. And I worked there, and all my heroes are working there, shooting, supermodels and rock stars and actors literally every day. There'd be Kate Moss in one day, Naomi Campbell the next day, and I was there making tea and painting backgrounds and not getting paid. I mean, they didn't even pay me.
It won't mean much to me in my complete ignorance, but give us some of the names of people who you looked up to, who you aspired to, because I'm sure
Nick Knight used to shoot there. There's people like Jürgen Teller, Salva Susbo was Nick's old assistant. Crikey. I mean, everybody and anybody. I mean, it was like the best of the best in the industry. Right. But Nick was a big idol of mine, a guy called Nadav Kanda. Didn't really shoot there as much because he had his own studio. But what I learned very early on, I mean, I was doing about 80 hours a week, sleeping at the studio probably 3 nights a week because I was so knackered. You'd finish at 1 o'clock in the morning, I had to be back in at 7. I had showers and everything. But what I learned there was how to, it wasn't so much the technical side of it, but it was how to be in business and how to either operate or not operate as a photographer, and how I wanted to work as a photographer. Because some of these guys were on like 30 or 40 grand a day for advertising back then. And I was out on the street doing tap dancing with a flat cap in Shoreditch before it was a thing.
And did I got sidetracked by the incessant fidgeting. Do I recall you saying that you were working there kind of for free? No?
Yeah, I worked there for about 16 months, and they used to pay your travel card every month. So I had to sign on. I mean, they've stopped doing it now because it's actually illegal. But I remember at the time, and this is how all of the London studios operated, Andy. Because it would be like, who are your top 3 hero DJs? Just give me 3. Just give me 3.
Louis Vega, Kerry Chandler, Grant Nelson.
No Dave Lee Travis in there?
No.
Okay. Probably a good thing, the hairy cornflake, mate. But the point is, you're 19, 20, and say you're working in a club that they're residents at, okay? And it's a case of getting your foot in the door, watching them, seeing what they play, seeing how they play, see how they interact, read the crowd, all that stuff. You're obviously technically, you know what you're doing. and you knew what you were doing, 300 years ago when we met. But watching how they would operate as individuals and how they would read the crowd and play this and know when to drop that trap, because, it's like, that is invaluable. That's what you're really learning. So it was a case of, they said to me, if you don't want the job, Brock, there's 30 other people that will do it. So it was like, I want to get on, I want to do this as a career. You just got to grab your ankles for a bit. And I've been grabbing them ever since. Mate.
But that does come back around to the old adage of people saying nowadays, you see, asking online, any student photographers, any student videographers, we have some work that needs doing, it'll be great for your exposure. And everyone's up in arms saying, well, that exposure's not paying my rent. But if you are in that position, as you say, sometimes it is completely invaluable, right?
Well, yeah, yes and no. I think that it's a kind of a false economy, because what a lot of companies do, they just want to, it's not about the creativity, it's about the bottom line. So it would be, rather than getting someone who's, and I'm not taking anything away from student photographers, technically with the digital age, they probably know more than I do, to be fair. But I think if you're undercutting what the day rate is for a job because you can afford to, because you haven't got a mortgage, you haven't got children or whatever to feed, then you're pulling the price down.
So that's completely different to what you were doing then. Isn't that the same thing?
Well, no, because I was working for free. I wasn't getting paid to make tea. I was just a skivvy when I first joined the studio. It was I wasn't taking pictures. I was literally a studio hand. So, I was making tea. I mean, I remember once we had Vogue in and they were shooting Chris Turlington, who's, always been one of my favourites from the sort of 90s era.
You buffered crazy there. You said Christy Turlington, right?
Christy Turlington was in on this day, okay? And the studios we were at, which were blackout studios, which was shot for flash, they had a daylight studio around the corner in Clerkenwell. And we had a modest car park on Pear Tree Street and in EC1. And I went down to my car, because I had a car back then, to get something out the car. And Christie's she turned up in this private cab, but it was like a Vauxhall Chevette. I mean, the wings didn't match. I mean, honestly, Christ knows where she got this cab from. I mean, supermodel at her peak. And she turns up in this, like an Austin Allegro, it was, right? Gets out the car, this supermodel gets out the car as nice as pie. Like, I mean, I was just sort of stood looking at her, just thinking, I wish I'd worn my Cuban heels that day. That's all I was thinking, because she was 2.5 feet taller than me. Anyway, hello, Christy. You're shooting in Studio One. Took her up to the studios. An hour later, she's like, I'm making some tea. Do you want a cup of tea? And you're sort of thinking, it's really nice that, you've got this supermodel. And I was like on the bottom rung of the ladder. I wasn't even on the ladder. And you've got this, iconic supermodel making you a tea. Still got the mug, actually.
Really? I bet you haven't.
I bet I have.
So tell us what this led on to for you then. Not the Christie story either.
Another cup of tea. So after, literally working my arse off there, I started, it got to a point where it was time for me to get a full-time assisting job with a photographer, or go out as a freelance assistant. So I did that for about a year. Same kind of gig, shooting studio, location, all over the place, Europe. over to the States a bit. And then I met a girl, an American girl, and I moved over to the west coast of America in, was it 90? It must have been 97.
I forgot all about that. Totally forgot all about that.
So I just put all my meager possessions into storage, took my camera and my portfolio and jumped on a plane and moved over there for a bit and did some assisting over in on the East Coast, and then shooting some tests with models and stuff just to get my portfolio together, and then moved back and just was sort of at a point where I was ready to start sort of shooting myself, which I did.
Some people would completely misunderstand that.
Shooting myself. So I started being a photographer instead of being an assistant photographer. So I came back, and in fact, I'd actually was shooting. So it would have been 96. And the reason I wanted to become a photographer was Anton Corbijn, who is a Dutch photographer who shot Joshua Tree. He did the Depeche Mode Violator Rose, very iconic covers, and Achtung Baby and stuff and all that. And he was the reason why I wanted to become a photographer in 87. I bought the Joshua Tree gatefold, and this imagery was just, I just thought the work was just so cool. And that was when I realized that's what I wanted to do, because up until then I wanted to be a graphic designer. But I came back, so I must have gone there in 96, came back, and the studio that I used to work at rang me up because they knew Anton was like this god to me, and they said, look, Brock, we know you're shooting now, but Anton's in for a couple of days. He's shooting Ewan McGregor. I think it was for Esquire or something. Do you want to assist him? And I was like, God, yeah. Even though I was like, he's like my hero. So I got to the studio, and he's Dutch, and the day before, England had beaten Holland 4-1 in the Euros, 96 Euros, right? So you can imagine what London was like, beating anybody in the Euros, let alone a very competent football team. But he was just the nicest guy. And the thing was, I was never really starstruck as an assistant. You learnt to not overstep the mark. You knew where your place was. You weren't over familiar with people. You just kind of, you got on with your job. But I was genuinely starstruck meeting Anton. And there was a point where I was putting up a colorama, which is the backdrop for this shot, and it was pink, I remember. And I probably made a complete tit of myself, but I said, look, Anton, you are the reason why. It was really cheesy, but I just felt compelled to tell him that he was the reason I was there. Anyway, about an hour later, he was very gracious, lovely guy. And about an hour later, his printer, and I'm not talking about a Canon, I'm talking about an actual physical human being, a guy called Brian, who was like in my opinion, best hand printer in England. I mean, he was a genius, and he used to do all of Nick's work and everybody else, and he used to do Anton's work. And he turned up with about 60 10x8 test prints of Achtung Baby. He'd shot all the artwork for U2, and Anton hadn't even seen them. So I'm there in the studio with my hero. Brian's like this. It gives me goosebumps now. I mean, even now, I've told this story. I've told it once. I've told it 300 times. And Brian's there laying out, 6 rows of 10x8s, all this stuff with Bono and The Edge and Larry and Adam. and you know, it was like these two, you know, creatives at the top of their game. You know, oh, we need to do that, bring that colour back, a bit more magenta in that, blah 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 blah. And I was just stood there, just going, it's not going to get any better for me, and it never has. It's been downhill ever since. 26 years later. But it was a moment. I mean, for me, it was just perfect. It was just perfect, and it still gives me goosebumps now.
Did you ask for any advice?
No.
No. You just did the job.
I just wanted to do a good job, not put my foot in it. Because I think anyone watching this can see that I probably put my foot in it at least 20 times a day. So I just wanted to do a good job, Andy. He was a good guy, and I know people say you shouldn't meet your heroes, but he didn't disappoint. He was very, you know, he was very humble, easygoing. It was a nice moment for me. Beautiful.
One that stuck with you forever. So you started shooting yourself, as you say. How did you get the work? What was your speciality? Did you have to have a specific field that you specialised in? You know, how does it work as a solo photographer?
I mean, the way my brain works, and
do you have to get agents or something like that?
Well, I mean, if you work full time for, say, 3 or 4 years for a rock star photographer, generally, you know, a baton is passed on to the son or daughter, and they get the sort of red carpet treatment. But I never was one. I didn't conform to playing the system. I've always struggled with, you know, having to do certain things a certain way to kind of get where you want to get, if that makes sense. And there was some.
I need you to expand on that. I'm
going to. So when I started shooting, I only assisted for a couple of years because I was itching. I think because I'd done the Mixmag stuff during my studies, I had obviously got a taste of doing my own thing. I mean, it wasn't a financial thing. I mean, it's like with you. You love what you do. You love music. You love tinkering and playing around. And you know, it's not a 9-to-5 job. And you know, it's a privilege, without sounding like a cliche, to do something that you really love. And I don't ever get up in the morning thinking, oh God, I've got to grade those images. You know, I love what I do. Mm-hmm. But I think that it's quite apparent that it's like DJing. It's not what you know, it's who you know. And I had a lot of friends in the early 90s, and do you like the way I've brought it back to music, Andy?
Yeah, I'm just writing a note of something.
Amazing DJs, technically shit hot, but they never made it to playing at all the big gigs because they just didn't. You know, they didn't play the game right. And I was guilty of that. I think very early on, I've always been, cheeky chappy, quick-tongued and all that and what have you. But I also don't suffer fools. And there's a lot of people in the industry that I didn't really relate to, I think. Mm-hmm. So I met Isabella Blow when I was assisting, and Isabella was the fashion editor of the Sunday Times Style magazine, but prior to that she'd been the editor at the British Vogue. She'd discovered Philip Tracy, hat designer Alexander O'Neill.
McQueen.
Oh God.
McQueen, maybe?
Alexander McQueen, Alexander O'Neill. Sorry, I haven't had my medication yet, Andy. I need. So, Lee McQueen. We knew Lee, and she was this extremely eccentric individual who was extremely patient and very generous with me. So I was assisting. She was styling with a few of the photographers that I'd been assisting. And she'd always sort of said, Brock, when you start out, come and see me with your portfolio or book, as it's called, and let's see, give you some commissions. So it took me ages and ages and ages to pin her down at the Sunday Times Style. But when I did, I went in to see her, and she was just so kind. And she started to commission me doing fashion stories for the magazine. So I think it was about 97. I've done a few things for Dazed and Confused, all free stuff, because editorial doesn't really pay anything. I mean, everyone sort of wants to work for Vogue or W or V or another magazine or all these magazines, but the photographer is generally paying out to work for these magazines because he knows that he'll get be doing Prada or whatever, whatever the latest thing is. So Isabella, I met her at the magazine. She commissioned me a story which I shot at Spring Studios in Kentish Town, and it was a swimwear shoot. But it was very avant-garde. It was all couture. It was really out there. And so we shot that, and I got the cover, and I got a 6-page editorial. And I was just like, I'd won the lottery. I was just so excited, just that I'd actually had something published, So we did that, and then Izzy was just really kind, and she'd send me over to Paris, and I was shooting editorials over in Paris. So I'd sort of fly, I'd go over on the Eurostar, and I was about 26, 27. And really, it was just like, it was hilarious because I'm a complete idiot and useless and not very well organised. And, these papers and magazines were sort of shipping me over to Paris to go to all these couture houses with Parisian stylists, picking out all the stuff and shooting it. And it was all ticking along nicely. So I did that for about 18 months. And she was really, really kind. And we shot at Izzy's house in Gloucestershire, which was absolutely nuts. And then I was doing editorial, and then I started to get back into doing a bit of music stuff and album covers. But when would it be? By the sort of late 90s, I think I'd come to the realization that fashion, even though I thoroughly respected the industry, imagery and all of that, I wanted something with a bit more depth to it. Right. So I went into advertising.
Wonderful.
So I then there was probably about a 2-year period where my fashion and advertising was sort of crossing, and I was doing music, and I was at an age, so I'd been sort of 2000, so I was late 20s.
Do you have to be the creative angle when you're in advertising, or are you literally just being given a brief and told what to do, or do you have to come up with the concept?
No, they've got creative. I mean, they've got art directors. Okay. So I think it was about 2002 or 3, and by this point I'd had a couple of agents, but I think the work that I produce, I want imagery to be beautiful, but I like it to be very simple. And I've always been drawn, and I think this will link into what I'm doing now. I've always been drawn to street casting, and shooting individuals that are, exceptionally unique and visually, for me, very rich to look at, but don't conform to what the media and magazines and fashion and it's a bit different now, but sort of 20 plus years ago, I would much prefer to streetcast people for jobs, because this is why I live in London. I lived in Australia for 10 years and I moved back to London because you walk down the street in we're in southeast London in Forest Hill, you go to any of the surrounding areas, you just see every diverse ethnic background, age, mixed race, everything, and it's just this rich tapestry of people. So, I was always sort of steered towards that direction, even back then.
I think a word that I use a lot when I'm talking to people, whatever the topic, is authenticity, authentic. You look.
I know what it means, Andy. Thank you. I've got Google word search, mate. It's just here.
I'm keeping shit. Go on, all yours. Carry on.
No, go on.
No, that's what you would more attracted to. You say about non-conforming. You wanted something that was authentic and the natural beauty in all of its forms, right?
Yeah, and I think I've always found individuals that stand out from the crowd, not because of the way they dress or what the hair's like or whatever, anything like that, but you've got freckles, you've got these. I mean, I want to talk
to you about that.
What, you not being? Well, you wouldn't. You were going to charge me too much.
So let's get back to the advertising, right? You got into the advertising.
So I started advertising, and I think the angle that my agency at that point were, I was heavily into the sort of tattoo scene in the mid to late 90s. I'd got a lot of friends who were working at some of the big tattoo shops in London, and I mean like rock star tattooists, and they were sort of working there. So I was into that sort of subculture, and those sorts of people really interested me. I mean, tattoos now, you got people like David Beckham sort of normalised sleeves, and you got Miami Ink and all these sort of shows that kind of normalised it. But back in the sort of mid 90s, tattoos weren't what they are now. So I was shooting a lot of these people that I found visually very rich to look at, that didn't conform to what was cool or what people were doing, day to day.
Yeah. And
that sort of went into my advertising, and I was commissioned to do this ad shoot for Snickers, of all things, but it was a really interesting brief. It was a guy called Cameron Blackley, who, funnily enough, is a guy from Melbourne, but was based in London at the time. And it was when Photoshop was really coming in, and post-production became this beast. Anyway, they did this thing, and it went gangbusters, and it won all these advertising awards. But my component was really very simple. I'd sort of shot the plates for it, and I don't mean dinner plates. I've shot the images, and then they've done all this post-production. And that really was sort of like my stepping stone into advertising. And that campaign that won all these awards it sort of helped me in good stead for a few years, because people are impressed with all that crap and I'm not.
Right.
Oh, you've got a whatever, a Logie award. I've got my 50 meters swimming badge stitched on, blanket stitch on my Speedos.
You got a black brick from the bottom of the swimming pool in your pajamas. Let me say good evening to Emily, to Tiger, to Johnny Hughes. Thank you for your comments, guys. Do continue, Brock.
I dread to think what those comments are.
No, they're just saying. Johnny says, I'm loving this chat. A very interesting peep into another world. And Emily says, Alexandra O'Neill, great singer, smiley face.
No one's commented on the cheese plant, though.
I told you they wouldn't.
I reared from a chick.
I told you they wouldn't. I
thought we were talking about potting mix and stuff like that. When you said mixers, I obviously got the wrong end of the...
Get on with it.
So fast forward, I then moved to Australia because I met an Australian who's now my wife, who we've had two very interesting, unique individuals, Olive and Elkie, who were very creative and keep me on my toes. But towards the end of our time in Sydney, and we were there for nearly 10 years, it was 9.5 years, and, you know, I had some good times and that, but for me, my work was getting to a point where I remember doing an ad job, and I was in the studio, and there was about 40 people on set, all right? And by this point, everything had gone digital, so everything was on monitors, which means everybody, as you well know, Andy, you know, when you're playing records, The minute someone's got a memory stick, it just opens a can of worms. You know, it's like everyone's a DJ, isn't it?
Yeah.
Apparently, I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm just trying to keep music in with the... So I remember we were doing this ad job, I think it was a Coca-Cola or something, and I used to shoot the Australasia summer campaigns. And there was about 40 people on set. And there was, you know, I got my digi operator, who's the person who looked after all the files and everything while I'm shooting. And you've got the art directors, the clients, and this and this and this. And I remember it was a bit like the sort of, you know, light bulb moment. And I was like, we're taking a photograph and there's 40 people. I think there were 42 people in the room.
But for Coca-Cola, you say?
It might have been Coca-Cola. It could have been.
You know, still huge budgets, obviously. If it on a smaller budget, it could have happened with less.
Yeah, but I mean, just because the brand's big doesn't mean they're all big hitters. But anyway, it paid for my hair transplant, Wayne Rooney Hair Clinic, which I'd like to give a plug to. I mean, look at that.
No, I was going to say they didn't do very well.
My back, though. So and I remember just sitting there thinking, why do we need to have all of these people to take a picture? It was just chaos for me. Mm-hmm. And I think at that point I realized that the advertising, I'd done it for 10, 12 years by this point. I just didn't, I wanted to go into something else, and I was heading towards 40. And I was given a brief by an amazing American creative director called Micah Walker, who's really maverick. You know, he breaks the rules, but he's creatively, he's got a great brain. And it was about 2012, so it was about a year before we moved back to London, and he said, I've got this brief, Brock, that you're perfect for, but you're up against Nadav Kanda, who at that point was probably my favourite photographer. So it was kind of like Barcelona. He was Barcelona and I was Peterborough United.
The mighty posh.
Yeah. So he gave me this brief, and the brief was to shoot 1,000 portraits, 250 in the Americas, 250 in Europe, 250 in Africa, 250 in Asia. And it was all for Dermalogica. So it was 1,000 portraits. And it was like, first of all, you need to, give us a budget and see what this is going to cost, Brock, and timings. And it was like, it was just the biggest thing ever, but it was the most tailor-made brief for me. So I'm up against Nadav to get the gig, and it was coming up to the end of the year, which in Australia is the summer. And it was about shooting skin and diversity in skin. So I think I shot 40 portraits of people, friends, family. Youngest was like 18 months old, oldest was 80. And it was just all head and shoulders, no makeup or anything, just their skin, just moisturizer. And I graded them. Mike could get grading them. That's, it's like you changing the levels. Is
this the point that I can ask you a question for the ignorant amongst us, myself included? Yeah. When shooting a portrait, the level of work that is required, that would go into it, the time involved, the level of intricacy, if that's the right word. And the reason I asked that question is because you will recall when I sent you a message out of the blue after seeing some of your work, we'll talk about, and I said, do you want to come to Vocal Booth and take some headshots of some DJs? There's about 50 DJs. And then you told me the work involved. I was like, I'm really sorry. I really think I underestimated what it is you actually do.
A bacon sandwich and a can of Fanta just isn't going to cut it, Wardy.
So tell us what's involved in a portrait.
I mean, the thing is, and it's...
Is this the part you tell me? Sorry to interrupt. Is this the part you tell us, or do you tell us a little bit later on? The level.
No, I can tell you now. So, going back to that brief that you kindly reached out for me to do, the actual shooting is relatively fluid. It's slightly more intricate than just pressing a shutter, which a lot of people just think you are literally just pressing a button. Yes, you are pressing the shutter release, but it entails a little bit more. But for the work that I do and how I grade my work, and that is like you changing the bass, the treble, and everything in between to make a track sound velvety, or you want it to sound bassy or whatever. Grading is, in layman's terms, if you've got iPhoto, you go into iPhoto edit, you've got saturation, you've got blacks, you've got whites, you've got all the levels and everything. And it's a slightly more intricate way of retouching your work. You literally look like you're about to fall asleep, Andy.
No, I'm loving it. And because of the different, you can get something set up in a certain way. I'm assuming you can have the environment set up in a certain way, but because each person is different, you're going to have to adjust the levels according to...
Yeah. So I have all my layers, which you have for doing audio stuff. You'll drop your template
channels.
All your channels, all your templates and all that stuff you'll drop in, and then you got to sort of find... You'll be doing it like that. And I'll be doing it like that.
Are you one of those guys who stands in front of the DJ at a wedding and goes...
No, because I'm taking the pictures, mate. It's the only reason I go to weddings.
Of course.
I've been to one wedding. Do you know what? I did. A very good friend of mine who is a DJ, a guy called Chris Fink. We've been mates for same length of time as we've been friends. And he got married a couple of weeks ago. And it was the 59th wedding that I've done as a gift for friends. So no, I wouldn't be at a wedding doing that. I'd literally be there.
Get back to the brief then. Let's get back to the brief. Forgive me for interrupting, but I think it's important to know the level of work that you go to.
So I graded these images, and Mike had just kept going, no, I want you to push it. It's too commercial. Be more editorial. I want you to really push yourself, Brock. So this guy was giving me it was almost like getting an advertising brief 20 years ago, where you were actually booked to do a job and you were allowed to do what you were meant to do. It'd be like me saying, Andy, can I get you to do a 3-hour set, and then you put a set list together, and then you come over and I'm like, oh, can you play this and this?
You were given full artistic creative license.
I was. And he really pushed me. And he pushed me into it was over the Christmas New Year, and I just sat in my office. I literally locked myself away because it was a lot of work. It was like a month's work anyway to grade it. And at the end of that, it was almost like this chrysalis and then coming out as a butterfly. Without sounding dramatic, I kind of went in there as this chrysalis. And when I'd finished grading this treatment to present to the clients, my complete thought process as a photographer completely changed. And I knew then that I didn't want to be in advertising anymore. And the job didn't happen because it was going to cost about $20 million. And it really was. I think we put our fee in, it was like $23 million to do it. And the job never happened. But what came from that was that I finally woke up. Mm-hmm. And that was it. And then we moved back to London. And 10 years later, here we are, looking at your fresh Benjamin Button face.
Okay, so somewhere down the line, correct me if I'm wrong, my memory following you like a proud sibling was the first shots that you started doing, were they beards?
Yeah, so whilst I lived in Australia, I met a guy. You know, he was visually very interesting. He got this whopping great beard. And then this was well before the sort of hipster, that whole thing came in. And he was a copywriter. He worked in the advertising industry. And I shot him, photographed him, and found out that he'd grown the beard because his best mate had died of skin cancer at 26. And he grew the beard because he wanted it to be a conversation piece, because everyone sort of talks about big beards, or, you know, if you have a massive afro, it's the same thing. You know, people just cannot not talk about it or touch it or say something. It's like when you're pregnant, apparently. Not that, you know, but you know what I mean? It's a conversation starter. So he started this charity, which was about Aussie men getting skin checks to prevent skin cancer. And it was all about beards. So I came up with this idea to shoot an exhibition to raise awareness for the charity. It was that simple. Mm-hmm. So I shot him, photographed him. At the time, I had a Tumblr page. I think this was before Instagram. It would have been about 2011, maybe 12. And I shot him and my mate, who was a tattooist who moved out from London. And they both had beards at the time. And it was before the hipster thing. And they went viral. And I mean, literally, I posted Scott's image and Miles's image. And Scotty emailed me about 2 days later and he said, Brock, that shot you took of me has been turned into a meme. It's gone viral. So I went onto my Tumblr and it got 192 likes. I'm like, mate, if that's viral, then, you know. Anyway, he said, no, it's done 500,000 shares in 4 hours. Wow. And it was everywhere. It was absolutely everywhere. So, and then my other friend Miles, I did this image that went viral. And I mean, we're talking 20, 30, 40 million shares. I mean, it just went mental, right? So at that point, I thought, right, we've got something here to work with to do something positive for this guy's charity and his late friend's legacy, because the whole point of this skin cancer non-profit was to just save lives. So we moved back to the UK, and I'd never done anything of this nature before. We moved back to Warwickshire for 2 years because Elkie was just about to turn 4 and she was starting school. And I was like, right, okay, we were on Instagram. I had a kind of modest follower amount at that point. But because these images had gone viral, within that sort of subculture, people kind of knew the work. So it was a nice stepping stone to get what we wanted to do out there. So I literally put these things out on Instagram saying we're doing this exhibition, and we need 60 subjects, and we want it to be international, and there's literally no budget. If you want to apply, you got to fly yourselves over.
While we're talking now, if people are able to and they want to peruse your Instagram while we're talking, give me the handle, what it is at.
It's just Mr. Elbank. So Melbank. But you're probably better off Googling just Brock Elbank or Mr. Elbank, because you'll
go to the website.
Because obviously everything's in chronological order. So it's, 8 years ago.
Okay, sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, if you just do Mr. Elbank beard. Yeah. So we were kind of at this point where, we were living in Warwickshire. To go down to London and shoot in a studio was just, we didn't have the budget to do that. I'm having sort of FaceTime meetings with the guy in Sydney, and, I got a beard oil company on board and a few other people to kind of assist, getting a few things off the ground. But I remember having this meeting, this sort of FaceTime meeting, and the guy from the beard oil place said, I said, we're going to have to shoot this at the house. We're going to have to shoot in the living room. I've got all the flashlights, the backgrounds, or, I've got all the kit. And I said, all I basically need is 3 square meters and a plug. That's all I need. So that's what we did. We'd shot a couple of the series. We'd had a good response. And we started production at the end of 2013, early 2014. And we ended up having like 1,500 applicants. We had people from 6 continents flew in. Furthest was from Brisbane, Brazil, Mexico, America, all over Europe.
How did the celebrities get involved?
Well, I had to sleep with them. You know me, mate. Sometimes you just got to take one for the team. For me, I've always fought the underdog, and I think having celebrities as part of it wasn't something that was particularly imperative. I wanted to shoot real people that were interesting visually. But as we kind of progressed, and I had to give up work because it became so big. It just consumed everything. I think I did about 4,500 hours of work on it in the end. But we got to a point where people were kind of getting on board and helping out that knew people and had contacts. And Sir John Hurt, who, was an absolute god in what he did, and I loved everything that he kind of represented. He was a total sort of rebel, extremely good at his craft, and a bit of an anti-hero, but he was just amazing. And he became, a conversation was had that he could possibly be a subject. And I was like, that would be amazing, because it would mean we'd get press, and it would, again, give it a bit of a shunt in the right direction. And there were only 2 or 3 images that I shot for that initial series where I actually travelled to them, and John was one of them. I drove to Cromer in Norfolk and shot him in a very old pub/hotel suite, and it was very basic. And he was a complete gentleman. He was absolutely brilliant. But I think when we shot John, we went up a level. You know, we're in the Times, we're in the Guardian, we did Time Out. I mean, we ended up getting £1.25 million worth of press for the exhibition at Somerset House. And it was the biggest opening night they'd ever had, which in itself was an absolute joke, because we were just literally like the swan gliding on the pond, but we were just like these frantic webbed feet panicking. I mean, it was just the most stressful. I mean, we just didn't know what we were doing, but managed to show at one of the best galleries in the UK. Incredible.
So alongside John, without focusing on the celebrities, but you know, it's a big feather in the cap. A complete opposite end of the spectrum, Graham Norton as well.
Yeah, Graham. That was really funny. Graham actually went to the exhibition while it was on at Somerset House, and he posted in front of a guy called Chris Millington, who was holding his arm in the shot, the subject. And my phone just started pinging, and everyone was just sending me this picture. And Graham had sort of replicated his pose and just sort of hashtagged beard exhibit. So, and obviously I wasn't there. I was I was probably changing nappies or emptying the dishwasher back in Warwickshire at the time. But I saw this window of opportunity, because what we've done since is that we reach out to well-known bearded people. I mean, this is 7 years later. And if they fancy being an ambassador for the charity, then they generally come to the house now, because I don't get out of bed for less than a bacon sandwich and a can of Fanta these days. I wish I'd taken you up on that offer all those years ago.
I'm definitely hearing.
But Graham was just this lovely. So I can't remember what happened. I just saw. I like to see an opportunity, and I did some detective work and got his PA's, his production company's email, and sent her, Becky, her name is, a lovely girl. And he was really busy. He was doing Eurovision, and then, he goes to Ireland. He's got a place in Ireland. He was writing his first book, and he wasn't, I think that was in the March. And I think I photographed Grant. Eddie Grant. I'm just going to drop in musical people's names that have got nothing to do
from different decades.
Yeah. Eddie Grant. Alexander O'Neill. At least I didn't say Grant Mitchell. I mean, they're going off on a complete. At least it's music related. So it was back and forth, and then finally I got this email from Becky, and she said, "Oh, Graham's up for this date. Do you mind shooting him at the office?" And it's on the South Bank. And I'm like, yeah, sure. So I drove in on my own, took all my kit up, and went into Graham's office. And he was the loveliest guy. We moved his coffee table. He'd got his sort of production business partner, with his little dog. And we had a really nice chat. And he was lovely. Really nice guy. We've done Tim Howard, who was the US goalkeeper for football, played for Everton and Man United. I was meant to shoot Tim actually on my birthday in April, and then we had to reschedule. I think it was a COVID thing. But yeah, we've had David Harbour from Stranger Things. He came over before COVID. He was shooting Black Widow. With Scarlett Johansson. That guy is...
Off the back of all of this... Sorry, Karen.
Yeah. No, I was just going to say, he's an absolute mountain of a man. I mean, I am the Ronnie Corbett of photography. I mean, I'm not tall, am I? I mean, I'm actually standing on this stool, and I'm just in frame. The laptop's on the floor.
We need a teaspoon to come in and bash you on the head.
I should hold a pound coin up so you can see the scale of how little I actually am. But David he's about 6'5", and he was about 18, 19 stone. He was an absolute unit. I've got a photograph of me and him in the kitchen at my house, and I look like Jimmy Cranky.
What I was going to say was, whilst doing all of this, it was cementing or reaffirming your idea of, you were still finding your strength, not your strengths, because you have a lot of strengths, but where along the line did you get the idea of, this is my forte now, this is what I'm all about? And because I'm conscious there's a lot for us to cover, and I'm conscious of trying to cover it all too intricately. How did all of the other topics of exhibitions come about?
So when we finished Beard, which was on the 29th of March 2015, I was completely burnt out, mentally, physically, financially. I mean, it was the most incredible journey, but I was on vapor. I was doing 20 hours a day for months because we had to, all right? And it was amazing, and I wouldn't change anything for the world. But after that amount of success, and it was a team effort, and everybody, I had people like Kate McKay-Haynes who came in, who was introduced to me. She helped on production. She's a writer. She's incredibly witty, articulate. I mean, she lives in Norfolk. Without people like Kate, just wouldn't have got it over the line. But after it had finished, it was almost sort of like the end of the holiday. You've had a holiday romance, you're 14, you've met the love of your life, you think, and then you're travelling back to wherever, and the realisation you've got school on Monday.
It's very difficult for me not to be disgusting right now.
I know what you think.
Carry on.
Anyway, I'm giving you a metaphor, Andy. I'm trying to be professional here. I've put one of our best cheese plants behind me just to hide a multitude of sins. Hide the washing.
You shouldn't talk about holiday romances at 14.
Maybe. You know what I mean? The holiday's over. It's back to normal life, is what I mean. Down to St Ives.
Yeah.
Willis Surf Shack. Was that Nuki? Anyway, so after the show, it was sort of, I've really got it. Have you got hay fever now? So the fact that I'm not losing my trail of thought is in itself broadcasting gods are helping out today. Because you're not.
No, I'm here. I'm with you.
Yeah, physically, mentally, you switched off 45 minutes ago.
Sorry.
So it was a case of I've really got to strike while the iron's hot. We'd had all this press. We'd been in literally every newspaper. We've been on the BBC. I've been on Radio 4, for God's sake. I went in. I did Radio 2. I did Radio London. I did Channel 4, Channel 5, Sky, everything. I mean, it was nuts, right? But without all of this, we had an amazing PR team at Somerset House. And like I say, it's a team effort. If these individuals hadn't applied and paid for their travel or done a crowdfunding to get to the UK, it just doesn't happen. But it was a case of, I've got to do something else. I'll be perfectly honest, I was sick to death of beards. And I was, I used to have a big beard. I've got a Triumph Bonneville. I used to ride my bike. And I mean, look at me. It's 2 days growth. That's as long as it gets now. I won't ever have another beard. It was like Southern Comfort. I had a bad experience on Southern Comfort when I was 16 in Norwich. Got alcoholic poisoning, and I've never drunk it since. So it was a case of we had all of this sort of press and media success for the charity. It was all great, but I had to build on that. So Freckles became the next thing.
So you reached out. I remember you putting a post up on Instagram saying, "Have you got freckles? Do you know people with freckles? This is what we're doing."
Is that when I blocked you?
Yeah, I think it was. I remember seeing it. And I think, again, after me saying, "Oh, can you just come and shoot some guys at vocal booth for me very quickly," I think I reached out and said, because I hadn't really understood the magnitude still of what you were doing. I said, if you need someone with freckles, mate, I'm here for you. But no, nothing came back. But after
Tumbleweeds, wasn't it?
Tumbleweeds. After then seeing the work that you did, I understand why. So you went to the way you grade the images, especially with the freckles. You were able to go to extremes to bring out the to accentuate
and
the freckles.
I'll tell you a funny story about that. So I started the Freckles series, and I have the same template for everything. So I come up with the idea. I'm either commissioned by an organisation or a charity to work together, which we'll talk about in a bit. But I literally put it out on Instagram, and I say, right, I set up a proper email. So it was, Freckles at Mr. Elbank, which I didn't do at this point. Okay, it was just studio at Mr. Elbank. So I did. And I started shooting a bit, and it was really ticking over nicely, and we were getting a good response, and the followers were, it was all going well. And BuzzFeed got in touch and said, "Brock, we want to do an interview." And any press is great because it's free advertising for what you're trying to achieve. So this guy, Matt, who's the journalist, got in touch and did this interview like we're doing now. And I sent him about 12 images that I'd shot. And it launched at midday on Saturday. And by the Sunday night, it had done 275,000 shares. And I got 10,000 new followers. And in a space of a week, I had 1,500 applicants apply for the series worldwide in a week.
Now I know why you didn't reply to me.
But yours always going to the junk anyway. That's how I've set my Google up.
Brilliant. So how did you even start to tackle that amount of content?
One email at a time, Andy. One email at a time. I was getting up at 3 a.m. At the time it would have been 2015. So Elkie would have been 6 and Olive was 3. And I've always been an early riser, and I just thought, I'll set the alarm clock 2 hours early. I was getting up at 3 o'clock just to wade through the emails. It wasn't until my very organised production wife, after I'd finished this series, she's like, "Why don't you just have an automatic reply email with instructions?" Which has been a game changer. It means I get an extra 2 hours in bed in the morning. But yeah, I just literally waded through it. And at the end, we'd had 7,500 people applied worldwide. And what I found fascinating, I actually did an interview last week for this journalist. They were doing an article on freckles, and they just wanted a quote from me. And I think the thing about freckles is like a fingerprint. I mean, I shot identical twins, and I mean identical. These were Olive's and still are best friends from school.
Yeah, your daughter's friends.
Yeah, and I knew Abigail and Eloise for 3 years, and I couldn't tell them apart. They'd come for sleepovers, play dates, parties. They were in our lives daily, and I just couldn't tell them apart. Until summer kicked in, and the freckles came out, and Abigail had a freckle on her cheek here. And it was the only way I could tell them apart. And it's stuff like that that fascinates me. I've shot people from the Caribbean who, have Jamaican heritage that have freckles. And they told me when they came over from Jamaica that there's something like their great grandfather was Irish and had sailed through the Caribbean to go to the Americas back in 1754 or something, landed in Jamaica, ended up marrying a local woman, having kids, and then that freckles gene was in the line of the family. Uh-huh. So there was a guy that I shot with Jamaican heritage from London who his mum and dad, nobody had freckles, grandparents, but he had a gene. And then, there was this relative from way back. It was like, oh yeah, Uncle Herbert had freckles, in 1896. And it's just
one of the guys that you shot, is it Freddie? He's a really well-known dancer on the circuit.
Oh, Frankie Johnson.
Frankie, not Freddie.
Frankie J. Yeah, when I shot Frankie, he's from Bristol, lovely guy.
Oh, he's Bristol, is he?
Yeah, and he was just about to go to America for the first time with doing his thing.
He is I'm not mistaken, he is a dancer, isn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah. I totally recognised him, because I remember it stuck in my mind.
Yeah, and he was this. What I love is that a lot of the series that I do, I've done vitiligo, I've done a thing called CMN, which is it's a very rare, extensive birthmark. I've done, I'm working on scars at the moment. A lot of the people that I'm very privileged to document, a lot of them have probably really struggled with their appearance at I think everybody can be.
Well, at this point, because time is racing on, I do want to bring it back to what this whole conversation is about. Your ethos is about. When I was reading I'm doing a little bit of research, the most research I've ever done for any interview, and I never do any research at all.
On Grindr, my profile.
On Grindr. You were saying about your aim is to increase body positivity and mental health awareness. You focus very much on that, and that's why I wanted to come around to the beards was great, the freckles was great, but I personally, your most striking work has been the latter three that you mentioned, the vitiligo, the scars, and the
CMN,
CMN, and we will talk about your podcast shortly. So do continue to tell me about how these people are affected, if that's the right word, by, these life-changing appearances, and yet you get to see past those when you photograph them, right?
Yeah, I mean, I've always seen, I think I said early on, Andy, that I think I look at not the world necessarily, but people, humanity, in a way that probably my late mother did. I had a very liberal upbringing. My mum had a very diverse set of friends in the 70s and 80s, and I had a gay godfather, and it was very, it wasn't the norm back in the late 70s and early 80s. And it sounds awful having a gay godfather, but, it wasn't like, But it was, it was just, we had friends from all different walks of life, and that's how I was brought up. And that's my way of seeing things. I don't judge people by what size they are, how tall or short they are, how, what colour their skin is, or anything like that. I take people on face value and how they are as an individual. And I think the work that we do now is purely about photographing exceptional looking human beings that probably for a long time haven't seen themselves that way, and I do. And everybody that I'm very fortunate to photograph are, in my eyes, just incredible people. And it's not necessarily how they look, it's what they've endured and how they've come out the other side. I mean, I literally could... I mean, I did an interview yesterday for a student who's writing her third year thesis project. And she asked me about who are the most inspiring people that you've documented, Brock. And I said I could literally talk for days, because I've photographed a woman from Italy who got meningitis. She lost all her fingers and her feet, and she got a bronze medal in the Paralympics in Tokyo. And she got no feet, and she did the triathlon. Mm-hmm. Phenomenal. And she's been on the front of Vogue Italia. These people are just incredible.
Getting the people to be able to tell the stories. Of course, some of the story comes across in the photograph, in the portrait, but then you've taken that to another dimension now by expanding on it with the podcast series.
Which you've been extremely generous with your wisdom and technical know-how. I mean, I was just doing it. It's still it's not like this setup. I mean, you literally look like you're at Pebble Mill. And I look like I'm in a greenhouse.
Tell us about the podcast.
Well, I think over the pandemic, work literally stopped. I had a vitiligo exhibition, which we were meant to be doing in June of 2020, that was cancelled. I had an exhibition in America the following May that was cancelled. I was meant to be doing a series for St Thomas's Hospital on cleft palates that was cancelled, and I was in talk about doing something for autism with the National Autism Society, which would have been about 4 years' work. It was there all on the table, signed on the dotted line, and then it was all gone. And it was really hard. It was a really tough time. And we've talked about this, and my work is about having people in my home, and I'm shooting them, and they're this far away from me. And with COVID, you couldn't even have anybody in the house. So I was kind of reaching out to a lot of the subjects who have all got these amazing journeys, and I don't even think they're stories, because it's still evolving and they're still learning and becoming better human beings for whatever. But as we came out of lockdown and work started to slowly click back into place, it was something that a lot of people had sort of said to me about interviewing these people, because what they've got to talk about is far more interesting than me, to be perfectly honest.
How on earth they get a word in, I've got no idea. Nice.
I'm learning.
Nice. No, but do continue. I jest.
But I've got ADHD, Andy, which I know probably is not great surprise, and it is quite hard because my brain does go at 1,000,000 miles an hour. But it is, I think, what is great about what they're talking about. It's not about me. It's all in one take. It's like this. It's not live. I mean, we just do an audio. Because I'm renting this plant and I've got to get it back to the hire shop before 8, otherwise they're going to charge me another 24 hours, which I don't think the production budget can afford that. But
we didn't talk about budget.
Well, the bacon sandwich and a Fanta.
The recurring theme.
Find one gag and just repeat it.
There you go. Podcast subject.
I'm just getting to. So the people, I've got 750 subjects that I've shot since returning from Sydney. So I've got this pool of wealth of interesting individuals. People that have, like a guy called Bo Zanker, who was in a 3rd floor apartment block fire in Chicago. Ended up with 4th-degree burns, but he saved 3 people's lives, and his girlfriend had to jump out of a 3rd floor window, shattered her pelvis, and he was engulfed with flames and was in an induced coma for 6 months. that's just one example. Closer to your home or where you grew up, in Birmingham, Elizabeth Soff, who's now an 8-year-old, who was in a house fire when she was 6 months old. 60 degrees of her body burned. She had 85 surgeries, and she raised over £200,000 during COVID for the burns unit in Birmingham, which is one of the best burns units in the world. Mm-hmm. So it's a wealth of amazing individuals.
Well, some of the individuals you've already spoken to will lead us to talk about the charity work and how you've enabled certain charities to amass a hell of a lot of exposure and revenue for themselves, and that you work very closely with. And then we can talk about your own fundraising activities. So the woman, again, I could have easily written this down. The woman that you interviewed, who you work closely with through
Jodie Whitehouse from Caring Matters Now. Yeah.
Tell us about that. Tell us about her story and how that came about and what that enabled her to do.
Yeah. So it was June 2016, I'd already shot a girl called Alexandra Garcia from Barcelona for my Freckles series. And I was unaware that she had CMM, which is a very dark brown birthmark, which is the only way in layman's terms. And she had quite large moles on her face. She was redhead, which are called satellites. So, small sort of dark brown freckles sort of things. So she turned up with her partner Alexis, really nice guy, illustrator, and I photograph her, and she shows me her back, and I'm just like, wow, it's incredible. I've never seen anything like that before. She was very body confident. I said, would you mind me shooting your back? It's called a bathing trunk, which we did, and we posted it, and it ended up going in Dutch Marie Claire, and it was quite successful for her, and it got a lot of awareness. And then I was approached by Caring Matters Now in June of 2016, and they said, look, we've seen this image. There's nothing positive visually online for this condition. Do you think we can do an exhibition and shoot people from all over the world and just get people out there? Because it's like 1 in 200,000 people are born with this condition, so it's super, super rare. So we they were taking a massive risk. They're a very small charity that punch way above their weight, and they just believed in me. They gave me. They did all the grown-up stuff because I'm rubbish about that. They did all the sort of admin, and I just said, you've got to let me just get on and do what I do. And they did, and they were incredible. And it took 3 years. We shot 30 subjects from. Furthest came from Queensland in America. In Australia, we had a little boy, Yukang, who came over from China. We had people from across Europe and Australia and Latin America. And it was just incredible. And we've just actually shot a girl from Birmingham as they want to keep topping up. We're doing a virtual exhibition in the United States, which goes live very shortly. So it's basically a virtual show of what we've done, but the charity want me to keep shooting new subjects globally and get more diversity in the subject matter. So we exhibited that at Oxo Wharf Gallery in London in March 2019. So again, they got about £1.5 million worth of press. I actually went up to Manchester to do BBC Breakfast, right? And I went up the night before, and my eldest nephew's in Coronation Street.
Okay.
And he'd just bought a house in Manchester in one of the suburbs. And I went round and we were just drinking till about 4:00 in the morning. And I had to get the cab back to the hotel in Media City. And I had to be at the BBC for 5:15. So I had a shower, brushed my teeth, and went in and did a live interview on the couch at 7:15.
Professional, the true professional, the true professional that you are. So I mean, so the outcome of all of that, I mean, the story is covered excellently in your podcast, but as you say, you raised the awareness with your work and their hard work. The awareness was raised for this charity, and it's globally now it's bringing so many new people who are saying you have literally changed their lives because they realise they're not alone. That was what I took away from the conversation.
Yeah, I mean, there was a girl. I say girl. She was mid-30s, called Lucy. We're in southeast London, and it was 2 days. We'd had a lot of press. One of the trustees at the charity is a TV producer, so we'd done BBC Breakfast, ITV. We'd done everything. And this is the charity as well, and some of the subjects. And we've just been very fortuitous. Anyway, I get this direct mail from this woman called Lucy the night before the private launch. And she said, look, I've got CMM brought. I'm 36. How much is the exhibition to go to? And I said, it's free. I said, God, it's for a charity. It's about, getting,
awareness.
People in the door. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So she said, look, I'm 36. I was given up for adoption the week I was born because she had the birthmark from under her chin. It was almost like she was wearing a wetsuit in very basic terms. Very, very striking, this woman. Amazing face. She said, I've never left the house without a long sleeve top on and a roll neck and full face of makeup. Ever. Okay? So just think about that for a minute, Andy. This woman is 36. She's never been to a public bath. She's never been on a beach holiday. She's never worn shorts. She's never, done anything that we all take for granted. Okay? Never left the house without long sleeves on. So I said, we're sort of pinging messages back and forth. It was about, 10:30 at night. And I said, you can, the opening day to the public's on the Friday. We're having the private view for all the subjects and their families, and then it's free from I think 9:00 on the Friday. So any time from 9 you can come down. And she said, will there be any of the subjects then? I said, yeah, there should be, at least 20 of them. And she's like, because I've never met anybody with CMN in my life. So not only is this woman, I mean, she's got a couple of kids, just was living in this prison, this mental prison, all her life. And I said, can you send me a selfie so I know who you are, so I can come and introduce myself on Friday, because we were doing interviews and stuff. And she turned up and she got the most incredible figure. She was wearing sort of fitted jeans and great outfit. And she was, I was being interviewed, and you could see her just meeting all the people that we'd photographed. And it was just, it's sort of going off over there. And I'm just sort of, finished the interview and I went over. And she just said, it's the first time I've left the house in a T-shirt ever. And it's stuff like that is why we do what we do. It's just, there were people coming to the exhibition with CMN in their 50s and 60s that had never met another person with CMN. They thought all the way through their childhood Nobody knew anything about it. And Jodie, who was episode 3 with the podcast, she's from Liverpool, and her mum worked at the local hospital, and they just started getting phone calls. She was sort of 12, 13, and, this thing grew, and they just wanted to help people. And because, it's like anything. If you being a teenager, growing up with something that you don't think anybody else has got, and you're dealing with hormones and body changes and whatever it is, and self-loathing because you've got a spot or this or that, if you've got like a birthmark or a skin condition or whatever it is, and you're having to spend 2 hours in the morning every morning covering something up so you conform to what society says is normal, and I don't do this ever, but it's such a wank word, what a waste of time. Mm-hmm. So if we can do something that's going to help little Johnny or Lucy or whoever who's 15 and feels alone and realises that there are other people exactly like them that are living whatever normal life is. I mean, my life's far from normal. Then that's a good thing.
Mm-hmm. So you've definitely found your calling now. I'll
tell you what I've found, mate. I've found my groove. And I've brought that right back to the music thing.
Well, this isn't anything you keep saying about music. This isn't.
We've got records. I mean, I have brought some records. I've got Manam Manam by the Muppets. Got that. I bought this with you in mind. 50p. Al Jarreau, Moonlighting.
Wonderful.
There we go. I got this. It's Raining Men, the Weather Girls. Bought that for you. So I thought, when I was going to hire you for my 50th, I bought all the records. This one, I thought was reminded me of how we met. Goldfinger. And I know that you like to screw the pink behind the brown. We've got Chaz and Dave. The Matchroom Mob. But I'm saving this because I know that you are going to pay me loads of money for doing this, doing up the house as in music, and we're going to do it in Margate. So I've bought all of these since you asked me from the bargain basement, and I wish I'd just said no to doing this, but and there we go, mate. There was my little snippet. I spent £10 budget on the bargain basement of finding the best records I could.
Are they from your own personal collection?
I bought those for this podcast. 10 quid. I mean, I've got what I do have that I actually did buy that I'm actually really, really proud of. Just talk amongst yourselves.
Well, let me say 1 hour and 48 minutes into this conversation. Thank you if you're still here. Brock and I are chatting. That's a brilliant record. Is that Angela?
I know it is. And this is the good pile.
Is that the track Angela, right? That Hill Street Blues theme tune.
How good's that, though?
Anyway. He's just passed away, didn't he, a few weeks ago?
Yeah, I'm relevant, mate. Everything I say is relevant.
If you're still here, we have covered.
You've probably got deep vein thrombosis.
Really important topics. We really do urge you to go and check out at Mr. Elbank on Instagram. We haven't even spoken about your foundation. Do we have the time to talk about your foundation? But it's going to be another can of Fanta. Okay, I can stretch to that.
I'll be brief because I am aware that it's 2 hours. It only feels like.
I did tell you.
Like yesterday.
I did tell you to rein it in, didn't I?
You should have stopped asking me questions. I mean, you did say how long is it going to be? I mean,
stop showing records. Stop showing me. Tell me about the foundation, the Elbank Foundation.
So
because this is very, very important.
Last September, as we limped out of the pandemic, and I'll end with this because I didn't think we'd do 2 hours, but it's because we know each other, mate, and I really had to I felt like I'd sort of wrung the tea towel out as much as we could, doing what we could as me just doing Mr. Elbank. And I was at a point where I needed to go bigger, better, but have good people around me that have a skill set that I don't have, in business and finance and production and all of that. So I think it was the 9th of September, I just had this thought, this light bulb, I'm going to set up a charity or a foundation. So long story short, we've set up, it wasn't going to be called the Elbank Foundation. It was going to be called something else, and I bought the domain name and everything. And then a woman who's a charity consultant called Sarah Richardson kindly gave me a couple of hours of her time to talk through what I wanted to achieve and just give me some insight of what I needed to do. And we'd already tried to set up the charity with a different name, but because it was a new name and there was no paper trail or anything, it got thrown out. To get a charity off first time is quite rare. So she said, you are the brand. You need to be the foundation. And I was like, I'm just not comfortable with that. I'm a 18-year-old.
Shy, retiring, don't like to be in the spotlight.
No, but I actually don't. I mean, I know I talk a lot and I joke around, but I actually don't like being the focus of it all. If you go through my Instagram, Andy, on a serious note, there are very, very few images of me.
True.
Because I don't
agree.
Yes, I can talk. You're asking me questions, I'm answering you. And that's it. And yes, I can talk, but it's really not about me. It's about the people that I photograph. But she said she was adamant that I had to be the foundation, and I was just like, pfft. Anyway, went back to the board, because I've got 3 trustees that work alongside me, and we said, okay, we're going to do the Elbank Foundation. So after 6 months of laborious paperwork and jumping through hoops, in February, it might have been Valentine's Day, actually. I think we got the company name. So we're now a community interest company with plans to, once we've got a few things under our belt, because it's a very slow process, to become a fully fledged charity in a couple of years' time. And it'll be called the Andy Ward Trust.
Beautiful.
Which I've never trusted you. That's the irony, Andy.
And neither should you. So what is the vision?
Just to continue doing what we're doing, but just on a bigger and grander scale. We've worked very hard for very little, and money's never been an object for me. It's about doing good work. So we've just put in an application with the Arts Council to get some funding to do the Vitiligo exhibition in London next June. So we're going to continue doing the Scar series, which I've got an incredible woman coming over from Zimbabwe. I think she's actually in the country now. She's coming on Thursday, who lost her eye and part of the jaw with quite aggressive facial cancer. Amazing individual.
So that's going to continue. We spoke about the podcast. We never actually named it. It's called Face Value.
Just because I'm a Phil Collins fan, really, if nothing else.
And available on all of now I gave you my honest opinions on it, didn't I, initially, and I said it was great, but stop trying to be like Alan Partridge. So get past the Alan Partridge first episode, and then it's really good after that.
I've split my lip from laughing. It's actually bleeding. You've made me bleed, Andy.
Not for
Again.
the first time. Oh dear. So, face value, that's that. Incredible work. I believe we have told a fantastic story of your journey. We probably got into the journey a little more than I had anticipated. I wanted to focus on the works, but it's been great. It has been great.
Well, I apologise to the listener.
Yeah, I was going to say
I've actually got a present for you that I've bought. I've got a thing with my mate Finky that if I have to find the most random record in the shop and I buy it for him, it's something awful. I came across this in Chroma a couple of weeks ago, and it is the Four Buccaneers. It's Tiswas.
Hold it over slightly more to your left. Down, because there you go.
It's the Four Buccaneers. So you've got Chris Tarrant, Sally, whatever her name is, and Bob Carroll G's. It's the Bucket of Water song. It's 50p, and that will be put into a cardboard thing and sent out, and you can play it on
the radio show.
On your show. Get some real punters in that know what you...
Emily says, "Where's Spit the Dog?" Thank you, Emily, for still being here. Appreciate it. Pugwash, good evening, sir. How are you, my friend? Thank you for listening. It's been, Brock, it has been a pleasure. Just sat here, you and I. You were very hesitant initially for us to have this conversation in public, but I had to force you into doing it. And there's
I bought you some serious quality to say thank you for your time and plugging.
After you raised all those millions of pounds in free press for your colleagues and associates, I'm hoping you are going to thrust my little stream into the stratosphere. So that's the only reason I brought you on.
I'm happy to trickle feed your stream, your bubbling brook.
There you go.
That's to my brook. I will happily plug your wonderful virtual chatosphere of a show.
What did I tell you about being Alan Partridge?
Mate, I'm just it's 8 o'clock. I'm now going to get charged for hiring this cheese plant. That on top of the 50p record. I mean, mate, I'm not made of money.
Go.
It's either I might have to try and sell this to the hire firm.
Go away. Listen, I genuinely, I know I've said it to you on many occasions. I love you, brother. Thank you. Incredible work.
Likewise,
incredible
my
work
friend.
that you do.
You got the looks, I got the hair.
And the talent. You got the talent. Mr. Elbank on Instagram. Drop him a DM. Let him know you watch this. Go and follow him.
Just abuse.
Brock Elbank on the website, and keep following him. I'm going to say goodbye to anyone that has got the stamina to still be with me. I'll send you a message in a little bit, bro.
All right, matey. Thanks, everyone. Good to see you, my friend. Bye, mate. Bye.
Absolutely incredible. Mr. Elbank, how about that? So, let me take a look. Thank you for still being here. Mr. Milford, glad to still see you here. Pugs, Mr. Hughes. So, the difficulty is when I'm sat here talking to people that I know, we have to keep it relevant, and I feel that maybe somewhere in the jokes, the importance and the grandness of what it is that Brock does might have been overlooked. Maybe it came across, I don't know. When I look back, when I watch it back, I'm sure we got the message across. Some of his images that he captures are absolutely breathtaking. On the screen here underneath me, I got a big smile on my face looking a dear friend of mine. I mentioned him last week on the stream. We lost him a few weeks ago, and next Tuesday we will be laying my good friend Greg Cross to rest, so I won't be on the stream. I will be in Birmingham on Saturday evening, actually. You can catch me down at the Hockley Social. I'm really looking forward to that. I'll be playing alongside Andrew Milford, and also E-Double-D is going to be there. I'm going to be sharing some music while people eat and drink in the background. Come and check me out. I'm going to be down there about 4 o'clock in the afternoon through till it closes 9:30, something like that. I'll be spinning around about 6 o'clock, so do come and check that out. Okay, if you're in Birmingham, of course, I would love to see you there. You can see on the screen logos popping up for all of my Access members. Thank you for being here. Thank you to the 1 or 2 people who have been commenting, and of course everyone that comes back and checks out the recording. If you aren't a fan of the Inspire and Be Inspired page, then please do go over and follow the page, because it shows Facebook that people are interested, and it gets us put into the field of vision of more people. It's really difficult to get people to notice us when we're going live, but I know many people check out the video recording, and I know we do have a lot of people on the podcast subscriptions. Thank you so much, guys. I will leave you. I've got my good friend Gary over from the UK, so we're going to go and enjoy Tuesday night. I will bid you farewell. Thank you for being here. I'll see you in 2 weeks' time. Take care now.